We'd like to start out with Justin Bernier, who's right there in the back. Justin, if you want to come up and we'll give you 5 minutes to talk, and then we'll move along and let you answer some questions.
Thanks. Thanks, Jerry. Whoa, I get the microphone. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You want to stand over here first? I want to thank a few people first. Jerry Stomsky for hosting this. A great job. I love what Jerry does here in Woodbury, which is doing a lot without raising taxes. Finding ways to do things with private money, with nonprofit money, with money from the community, without raising taxes. I know that Barbara Perkinson, where is she in the back there? Barbara Perkinson has a great role to do there. Thank you for backing them up on everything. And I know you were busy back there a little while ago with the wraps, the sandwich wraps. Kai Westy was here talking about the bologna factory. And that got me really hungry, actually. And then I saw they had sandwiches back there, and I was wondering, hey, maybe that's some of that Chris Murphy bologna. But they've got better stuff than that, some chicken and some chocolate cookies and all that kind of stuff, so enjoy. A few other people here. Jason Marshall, right there, President Northwest Connecticut Sportsman Council. Thank you very much for the work that you do on behalf of the outdoors. And where's Ed DeCorian, who had this is his brainchild. Where's Ed? Ed, wave. Ed, are you having sandwiches? There he is in the back. Okay. And then lastly, the guy who's filming here is actually Chairman George Linkletter of the Sherman RTC. Sherman just had a huge victory getting a Republican in the first election slot, so great job. This is very important what we're doing here. Right now in Connecticut and across the country, the outdoorsmen, the sportsmen are under attack. And when I was growing up, my first exposure to firearms was, I believe, around 11 years old in the Boy Scouts, where we fired 22s. Who here was in the Boy Scouts and was exposed to firearms there? Okay, we got some arms going up. Or the Girl Scouts. I think we had, okay, some ladies that were firing the 22s back in the Girl Scouts. And that was a great experience, and obviously later on recreational firearm use, and then eventually the U.S. military getting qualified in the M16 and the 9 and having exposure to firearms. And all the while, but especially as an 11-year-old coming up, it was that sense of responsibility. It was that experience that in a lot of ways was a life-changing experience, because it is a huge responsibility to use firearms safely and to know what you're doing with them. And now I look in Hartford, and I look at some of the bills in Washington and even in the United Nations and some of the things that they're trying to push through there, and it's anti-Second Amendment. It's anti-firearm. And there's no doubt about it. But make no mistake, the outdoorsman community right now, especially in Hartford, is under attack. And programs that have long been funded by the outdoorsmen for pheasant hunting, for fishing, they now see as a cash cow for other programs. So they're going to continue to tax for those licenses. They're going to continue to charge outdoorsmen for the right to our heritage, our legacy, our rights to the outdoors, taxes for that, but they're not giving anything in return, programs that were set up specifically for sportsmen. So I believe that you've got an element in Hartford who is really committed to eradicating sportsmen out there. And we need to identify that, recognize that, and deal with it. And how does that relate to this election? We have a choice, many choices in the different races here, on what kind of Republicans we're going to endorse, we're going to nominate, we're going to put up to run in these races. And I'm going to tell you today what I'm hearing out there from voters, independents, conservative Democrats, and especially Republicans. They are not looking for Democratic light. They are looking for conservative principles. They're looking for conservative candidates that are going to go out there and show daylight between us and the liberals. Because the choices we have out there in this election are not small. The choices are now whether we need to reduce spending by 10 or 20 or $30 billion, or whether we need to make minor tweaks to the tax code in order to get the economy going. The choices are whether we are going to have a centralized government-run economy, or whether we're going to have freedom and free markets, what this country was based on and what made it great. It's that clear. And so, in the short amount of time I have left, I just want to leave you that impression, to think about this as we go forward, and to remember that if we do endorse and nominate conservatives, that is going to give us the firepower we need down in Washington to make the big changes that have to happen for this country to be saved. And we don't have a lot of time. So look around at the candidates, look what they stand for, and as we come up to this convention and this primary in general, make sure you fight for those conservative principles, because I know we will. Thank you very much. A little bit late today. I've got to get back to my family, but I encourage you to visit us at one of our free events in Waterbury. We're coming up in Newtown soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much, Justin. I saw Mark Greenberg. Mark, if you'd like to come up and address us, please. Thank you.
Thanks for holding this event. Woodbury is a town that's very close to me. I feel very, very much at home at this town. Of course, I ran for 2010, running again. And this is a town that really, really understands the Constitution, really understands the rights of people who believe in the Second Amendment. Anyway, I'm Mark Greenberg. I'm 58 years old. I live in Litchfield with my 4 young children, ages 9 and lower, and my wife, Linda. Also, Linda and I started 7 years ago the Simon Foundation. Some of you folks may have adopted a dog or a cat from us, and I'm very, very proud that every morning I wake up, I save another animal. It's really something that Linda and I are very, very proud of. Now, when I was growing up, many, many years ago, I used to take my bicycle to the candy store 5 miles away. People used to come to my yard, which was a corner lot, and they'd get on the bus to elementary school for the private schools. And we'd have 15, 20, 25, 30 people at my house talking to each other and getting together and getting on the school bus. Well, you don't do that anymore. You don't get on a Schwinn bicycle anymore or a Cannondale and go to the candy store. And you certainly don't go a half a mile to a friend's house and talk and get on a bus with other folks. You know, the buses stop every house. Things are changed. Things are changing for the worse, in my opinion. When I started out 35 years ago and I built a pretty big business, the American dream was real. I am a product of that American dream, and I started with less money in my pocket than I have right now. Now, that American dream, for my children in that generation, is just that. It's a dream. It's not reality. Jobs are not available. The same economic conditions are not available to them that were available to me. And that's exactly why I'm in this race, because I need to ensure that this country is as wonderful a country with the opportunities that were available to me for my children and their generation. We have $15 trillion in debt. 42% or 43% of our budget is borrowed from the Chinese and from the Japanese primarily. Over 3 years it's been since we've had a budget passed by the Senate. You know, the Congress and the Senate and the President have elevated dysfunction to a new level. I'll make a case that it's worse than that. It's almost gross negligence. It's that bad at this point. And all these candidates, congressional candidates, Senate candidates before me have talked about how things are bad. Well, they are bad. But I truly believe that it's darkest before the dawn, so I'm going to be the optimist in the room. And I'm going to say that if we take back the Senate, if we take back the presidency, if we hold our line on the congressional races this time around, that we're going to be very encouraged by a major change in this country. We're going to become great again. We're not going to give up our status to the Chinese. We're not going to do that. Our dollar's going to become strong again. But we have to do the right thing. We have to get people of principle in Washington. Now, I've signed a pledge. You may have seen it in Waterbury, exit 25A. If you were stuck in traffic, you saw my pledge. And that pledge deals with 3 things. I think these are 3 important things that will get our country back online. Number 1, term limits. We have to take the career. We have to take the careerism out of Washington. We have to send folks to Washington who are like you and me. That's what was intended. But if we send down folks who sit there time and time again for 20, 30 years, all they're going to be wanting to do is protect their own turf, their own job, and they will be voting on bills to do that. They'll be voting for re-election, they'll not be voting for you. Second part of that pledge is that we simply cannot have laws passed by Congress that exempt themselves. Some candidates before me have talked about insider trading. That's one of many. But some folks go down as people of modest means and they come back wealthy. Happens all the time. That's not right. People should go down for the right reasons, do what's right, and come back to their family in their district. That is absolutely certain. Okay, third thing, maybe less important, but I don't think that congressmen should take pensions. I think that they... Much the same reason why I think that there should be term limits. You should go down, do your job, not for the perks and benefits, but go down because you want to do what's right for the country. You want to give back to this great country that you've taken from. And those are three things that I think are very important that I've signed on to, and hopefully you drive by it every single day. Now, with these three things, I think that we will bring a change to the country, because if we change the attitude down there, change the reason why people are going down there, we'll change this country. And things will be better on for the future, for us and for our children. We have to make sure that the foundation is strong. Without a strong foundation, the roof caves in, and we can't have that. So thank you very, very much for coming out, and I hope to be able to get your support in this upcoming election.
Thank you, Mark. Is Mike Clark here? I saw, there you are, Mike. Thank you for coming. Good to see you later.
Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, folks. For those who don't know me, my name is Mike Clark. Up until about 2 months ago, I was a 3-term mayor of the town of Farmington. And as far as my professional background, I've worked for United Technologies Corporation for 8 years. I'm also a professor of criminal justice down at the University of New Haven. And prior to that, for 22 years, my true profession, I was an FBI special agent both here in Connecticut and also in New York City. When I retired in 2004 from the FBI, I immediately went to work for UTC and immediately ran for office as a Republican, and I proudly served the town of Farmington. And I'll talk a little bit more about my achievements in Farmington as we go along. When you come out to groups like this, you're often asked one of the questions, why are you running? And there's, you know, almost every day I'm reminded in one way or a manner of why I'm running. This morning when I woke up, the headline was, President Obama tells Iran he's not bluffing. Think back to when Ronald Reagan was elected and we were in the middle of an Iranian hostage situation. Did Ronald Reagan have to tell anyone that he was bluffing? And did those hostages come right out within hours of him taking the oath of office? So when you think about some of the reasons, why are you running? You look right there at what this president has done to this nation and what a Democratic Senate has done, and for 2 years he had a House as well. And we are facing a crossroads in 2012. We're looking at a crossroads, and you know, how many of you, just like me, are sick of $15 trillion budgets, or deficits, I should say? Or how many of you are tired of 4 out of every $10 spent being borrowed? It's just unconscionable what's happened here, and if we don't make a change in 2012, it's going to be too late. We're going to be too far down the road, and in 2014, when Obamacare kicks in, we are looking at an absolute nightmare, and also a fiscal nightmare on top of the nightmare we already are living. So we have tremendous, tremendous decisions to make, and I'm going to steal one of Brian Hill's thoughts here, where he mentioned something that's really important, and it's, are we sending the right candidates out in these races? And what I bring to the table is a little bit different than what many others do. I've had 35 years of work experience. I've had a proud career of integrity and honor in fighting terrorism and corruption with the FBI. I've worked for United Technologies Corporation, our largest employer in this state, and I've been to China and India and to Indonesia, and I see where our jobs are. They're over there in Asia instead of here. Many times the reason is there's just too much uncertainty for government. Ask yourself this question if you're a UTC vice president or president and want to move a business here. Do any of you in this room have any idea what our tax policy will be next January? No one has any idea. And if Obama's elected, it's a nightmare. That's the idea that we're going to see. So as we go forward, as we're making the big decisions on May 18th at the convention that's coming up and possibly the primary to follow, we have to find people who are electable. And I've proven in my time in Farmington that I am electable. I can hold the Republican fiscal base as well as gather the support of those who are unaffiliated, independent, or conservative Democrats. And that is key that we find, because in this district, 45% of the people are independent voters. 45%. And you have to win those votes to win this election. Politics is personal relationships and it's numbers. And there's no shying away from those numbers. They are facts. So I'm going to close with just a little talk about what I did in Farmington during my tenure there. And Farmington is demographically very similar to the 5th Congressional District. We have the lowest mill rate in our region. We've had job growth every year, grand list growth every year. One of my proudest accomplishments, I paid off 20% of our debt. We had $72 million in debt. It's now $56 million and dropping as we speak. And what I'm most proud of, again, you talk about the news, you see Connecticut and the United States of America with a bond rating that's less than AAA. That's an embarrassment. Farmington's bond rating was upgraded 2 years ago to AAA status. And so that's the legacy I've left the taxpayers and citizens of Farmington. And that's the core principle that I want to bring to Washington. To serve the 5th District, to serve you, and to serve this great state. So again, as you start to make those decisions in May, make sure you're looking at, drill down a little bit on everyone's resume. Because a lot of people can talk the talk. You've got to be able to walk the walk. And I have walked that walk. As a good, conservative, fiscally conservative Republican. So thank you all for your attention, and thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Nicely done. Next on our list is Lisa Wilson-Foley. Lisa, please. Okay.
Well, I am honored to be here, and I am honored to be a candidate for the Congressional District, District 5. I believe it's the best district in the state, don't you? Yeah. You know, I'm not going to stand up here and pretend that I'm a sharpshooter or that I'm an avid fly fisherman. I was unfortunate to grow up in a small apartment, and my mom was a breadwinner and the caretaker, and guns were not a big part of my upbringing. But I was fortunate to meet a man over 20 years ago who was an avid sportsman. And he did teach me the benefits and the great opportunities with putting a gun in my hand and putting a line in the water. And so our 7 children have been fortunate also to be raised learning some of the sportsman activities. And it's interesting, our 3 sons are all better with a gun or an arrow, a bow and arrow, than my husband and I put together. And 3 weeks ago, our middle son, Connor, stood up and we lost our dog. My 13-year-old daughter, Kira, lost her Boston Terrier because 2 very blatant coyotes came onto our backyard and took him out. So our second son, Connor, decided that he was taking a week off from work and he was going to stalk and hunt the coyote pack that have been terrorizing our neighborhood. And it took a few shots, but he actually was able to find and kill the coyote. And our seven children all celebrated. We were in many places. We have kids that live out in Jackson Hole now and in other parts of the country, but we all celebrated that feat. And we were proud parents that our son took aim and took action. He stood up against an animal that was terrorizing our neighborhood, not just other family pets, but we were also concerned about young kids. So I am a member of the NRA, and I also do feel strongly about our Second Amendment, all of our amendments. I don't just think that our Second Amendment is only about gun rights. I believe it's about our liberty, and it's about making sure our government does not continue to encroach on our freedom and our liberty. It's more important than just guns. You know, I believe that right now, we are at a tipping point. We can be makers, or we can be takers. We can be an opportunity society, or we can be an entitlement society. I know what kind of America I want to live in, and what kind of America I want to fight for. How about you? I want a country where freedom and opportunity reign, and where hard work and competition are rewarded. And I've worked hard all my life. I grew up in a very poor household. I worked hard for my education. I've worked hard for my family. I've worked hard for my family of businesses. I know what it takes to meet a bottom line and make a payroll. I know what it takes to deal with all of the obstacles that our government puts in front of small businesses. I believe we need to send people to Washington with real-world experience, with common sense and strong principles. That's what's going to turn our country around. You know, I went to school for physical therapy. At 18, I chose that field. And I'll tell you a quick story about one of my first patients. His name was Sam. He was a farmer, young 40s. I went into the ICU unit, and I saw the nurses and doctors, and they were looking at me. They knew I was green. Fresh eyes, right out of school. And they did not believe that Sam would ever leave that hospital. He had had a major coronary, and he was in a coma. And I was naive, and I was green. I was newly minted, but I was passionate. And I went into his room, and for 3 days, I worked his body, and I tried to get him to show some sign of life. On the third day, he blinked, and that was my sign. You know, my mother always taught me, you work hard and you say a little prayer. And that's what I did with Sam. And it took months, and it wasn't pain-free. But Sam walked out of that hospital with a cane, and his 3 young kids behind him. I refuse to give up on Sam. I will never give up on America. Now, our economy is flat on its back, and we need to use every resource and every tenacious bone in my body to make sure that we get it kicking again and we get our country moving forward. We can't do this alone. We need everyone in this room to support the candidate so we can take back our country, take back this seat. I promise you this, I will not only protect the Second Amendment, I will protect the Constitution. And I will make sure that we move that tipping point and that point where we can move to the right or we can move to the left. I know which side I'm on. How about you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Representative Andrew Roraback. Andrew? Thank you. Senator. Sorry about that.
I'm senator now. I want to be representative. I once was a representative, and I'm delighted to be with all of you. My name is Andrew Roraback. First, I want to introduce Jeffrey Chase. Jeff, can you raise your hand, please? Jeffrey is a tracker with the Democratic State Central Committee. Jeffrey has been following me everywhere I go, both at the state capitol and in the district, hoping that I'll say something that I regret. He's filming every word that I say, and that comes with the territory. I'm not surprised, because the day before I announced my candidacy to be your congressman, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in Washington filed a Freedom of Information request with the legislative branch of government in Hartford and ask for a copy of every letter I've written, every email I've sent, every trip I've taken, every phone call I've made in my 18 years of service in the Connecticut General Assembly. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is afraid of me. That's good news for we as Republicans. The reason they're afraid of me is because my life's work for the past 18 years has been serving the people of Northwest Connecticut in the Connecticut General Assembly. And I'm proud of the service that I've given to the people of this corner of Connecticut, and I wish to continue that service in the United States Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, I currently serve as the ranking Senate member in the legislature's Finance Committee. What that means is that for the past 3 years, it's been my job to push back on the largest tax increase in this state's history. A tax increase that couldn't be more poorly timed, and a tax increase which is inhibiting economic recovery in Connecticut. I'm also one of 2 Republicans to serve on the State Bond Commission, which means I've had the opportunity not only to speak against, but also to vote against the busway from New Britain to Hartford and a lot of other senseless laws. The reality is that all 5 candidates in this race on our side of the aisle are conservative Republicans, and don't let anyone convince you to the contrary. I grew up in a household where boasting was not encouraged. My parents taught me, as I'm trying to teach our son, that tooting your own horn isn't very becoming. But my political handlers have said, forget about what your parents told you. If you're running for Congress, there's a few things people ought to know about you. So if there's nothing else that you might take away from this event, please do know that in the 18 years I've been serving in Hartford, I've never missed a single vote. I've been present, thank you. I've been present for the people I represent 8,475 consecutive times, including some this week, our latest votes this week. And what I want to do is bring the skills, the relationships, the passion for public service, and the ability to get results to work for you in Washington, D.C. I stand ready to hit the ground running to represent the people of the 5th District. I make no apologies for having served 18 years in the Connecticut legislature. Every single year of my service, I've also held down a full-time job as a practicing lawyer with my father, my brother, and my sister in Torrington, Connecticut, in a family law firm that was started by my great-grandfather in 1883. I'm the 4th generation of my family to practice law in Torrington, and we are still trying to figure out how to make a buck. If anyone has any suggestions, these are tough times for everyone. We do the best we can. Jerry, could people here raise their hands if they're a member of the Minortown Road Firearms Enthusiast? Is that an organization?
It is.
Thank you. And you are the ones that are hosting us here today, correct?
Yeah, Minortown Firearms and the Northwest Connecticut Sportsman's Council were sponsors, along with the assistance of the Woodbury Republican Town Committee, who allows these facilities.
Well, thank you. And I just want to, for a minute, tell you a couple of things that are going on in Hartford this week that relate to issues of importance to sportsmen and to firearms enthusiasts. And it's a little dull, but sometimes the work of elected officials is dull, but it matters to people. Last year we passed a law to allow people to use revolvers when they're hunting on private land. We used the term revolver because there was some sensitivity in the House of Representatives that if we use the word pistol, people might not let the bill pass. So, well, it's an interesting institution. I hope everyone gets to watch CTN from time to time to see us in action. So because we use the word revolver, it's now legal for people to hunt on private land with revolvers, but they're not allowed to use a single-shot pistol. So we're working on a bill, and there'll be a public hearing on Wednesday, to allow not just revolvers, but single-shot pistols. I'm also going to do everything in my power to make sure that the state of Connecticut doesn't shoot itself in the foot, if you'll pardon the bad pun, and I'm at the Firearms Enthusiast place, but in bringing an end to Connecticut's pheasant hunting program. We raise more money through the sale of pheasant tags than it costs to administer the program. Or if not more money, it's darn close. The ruffed grouse population in this state and the woodcock population in this state are declining. We are not doing Mother Nature a favor by taking away pheasants from the universe of birds that people can hunt. And again, I don't wish to bore all of you with the mundane work that's done in Hartford, but it matters. And much of the work that an elected official does doesn't capture the headlines. But in my view, much of the most important work that we do doesn't capture the headlines. I had a call on Friday night from a 21-year-old young man who lives in Cornwall, who I've known since his days of bringing the best vegetables to the Goshen Fair of any kid in Northwest Connecticut. And he called, he said, Andrew, I know you from the fair. I applied months ago for my pistol permit, and we can talk about another thing that's going on in Hartford, which is the unconscionable delay that the Department of Public Safety is placing on the processing of people who are lawfully seeking to secure their permits to carry. The Second Amendment comes under assault when our government doesn't timely process the paperwork necessary for people to avail themselves of their rights under that amendment. But Kyle called me and said, Andrew, I've spent $240 so far trying to get my permit to carry. And I just got a letter from the state saying that my background check with them is okay, but my background check with the feds is no good. The FBI has something on me. So I said, Kyle, what did you do? Why is it that the FBI has something on you? He said, Andrew, I've never done anything. You know me, you know my parents. There's a snafu somewhere in their computer, and I want you to help me sort it out. And that's what I'm going to do on Monday morning. Ladies and gentlemen, there are big issues facing the United States of America. And I think we Republican candidates all have a very similar view when it comes to what this country needs to get itself back on track. But what I bring to this race is 18 years of problem solving, of representing you, the issues that matter to you. And that's what I want to bring to bear for you in the United States Congress. Jerry, one more thing. I'm taking too much time. I'm the last candidate to have announced my entrance into this race. I did so on October 20th. I'm kind of playing catch up. But I think Mike is right. The thing that we as Republicans need to focus on is which candidate holds our party's very best hope for winning the election in November. I'm running for Congress because I don't want Chris Donovan to be my congressman. I've worked with Chris Donovan for 18 years. And I'll say that right to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee thing. I don't want Chris Donovan to be my congressman. I'm the only candidate in this race. I represent today 15 of the 41 towns in the 5th Congressional District. For 9 consecutive elections, I have been elected to the Connecticut General Assembly, not just with our Republican base, but also with the strong support of unaffiliated voters. As Mike said, 45% of the voters in this district are unaffiliated voters. In 2008, Barack Obama won the 5th district with 57% of the vote. In that very same year, I won re-election to my state Senate seat with 65% of the vote against a very strong Democratic opponent. If we wish to have a Republican member of Congress from Connecticut, the 5th district is our best hope. If we wish to have a Republican member of Congress from the 5th district, I would respectfully submit that I am our party's best hope. I'm going to be working very hard to earn your support, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak before you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, all the candidates.
Do I have to come on?
No, you're good there.
Some of the candidates touched on the topic and some seem to avoid it. So I'm going to ask two questions if I could. Question number one, I'd like to hear what their personal interpretation is of the Second Amendment. And question number two, I'd like to ask if entrusted with the office of a United States Congressperson, what do they pledge to do to strengthen our Second Amendment rights?
Great questions. Why don't we ask all the candidates to come up and pass the mic.